Level is established. We've got an idea that this is the current bracket, and that's where we're trading from and to just now in terms of treasuries, in terms of that 15-minute perspective. Now, inside of 15 minutes, we can go down to 5 minutes. We could even go down to scalp trading this as a simple narrative. Let's see what it looks like. Now, obviously, what I'll do is I'll get rid of the bond price, and I'll just replace it by the NASDAQ, for example, as we go down into these other levels. Now, you can see in the background, the toxic buyer was here. So what are you going to do? You mark from the bottom of the candle. So you take in at least a little bit of the pin, and you mark from the bottom of the candle, and that's your toxic buyer. The toxic seller, right here. Okay, so there's your sell zone, and there's your buy zone. You get another toxic seller here, so you're thinking that that one's going to be busted, but it still holds. Okay, so that's good news. But the fact it does hold makes this seller here redundant. It's probably going to go through that seller there, and it's going to go up to this one. So you get rid of this seller, and it gives you a new target price. You're now trading towards this target price here. You can see that we don't quite get to that target price. We get very, very close to it, and this is now our new commercial bracket here. That's our current commercial bracket in terms of toxic traders. So that's the toxic traders there. Now, that's on a 15-minute chart. Now, as I mentioned before, you can actually take this down into something like as ridiculous as a 1-minute chart, and you'll see it happening. You see it? So inside the toxic sellers and the toxic buyers, let's just deal with what we've seen so far in this last little phase here. So the toxic seller came in at that price. So there's your top line toxic seller. A new toxic seller came in here, a new toxic seller came in here, but go no further, so it wiped that guy out, and the toxic sell came back in from the same top line price. If it's toxic sellers in one sequence, it's probably not the right sequence to be on. And then we get a toxic buyer. Now, that was obviously a toxic buyer there, comes up, and then a buyer comes in here, but because a seller comes in here, that guy vanishes, and this becomes where the toxic, this is now the current bracket. Now, you can see that regardless. You don't need an indicator to spot that, do you? But it's still a useful little thing to see. It's still a way of just reminding yourself to make sure that you do see these toxic candles on your screens. When you look at oil on a 1-minute chart, you can see what happened here. There's the toxic seller right there. So you can already see where the toxic seller came from there on oil. You can see that's where the sell came from in the most recent passage of play. The toxic buyer that came in here, they got wiped out. There is no more toxic buyers below, so the market just sails off through. Sails off through. The indicator I'm talking about just says demand and supply zone indicator. So in other words, what they're looking at is a fast toxic candle breaking away from that area, yeah? So a fast candle break will create a toxic sell, a sell zone, just there, a supply zone. So that's exactly right. That's a proper use of the indicator. That's why Sammy did it on Sierra charts for you. So when you get a fast money sell, it suggests that there was an imbalance of supply demand in those areas. Yeah. Now, obviously, when it has follow through, I don't like it like this here, where it immediately stops and turns back round again. That doesn't mean an awful lot to me, but you still have to pay attention to it, that is currently a toxic buyer. And obviously, when it trades away from this, we're starting to watch it. And then when a toxic seller comes in here, that guy's getting wiped away, and you're obviously going to go lower than that price. You can do this all the way through to the other bigger time frames, guys. You can do this up into 30-minute charts. 30-minute charts actually are slightly better for you because obviously it gives you the bigger stories to play inside of. So for example, you can see that there was a toxic buyer at this price here. Well, where do you think the buy came from? Right off of that buyer level, right off that buyer level. And you can see that that's where the prices really struggled to get through. The top line toxic seller came off of this edge here, and that obviously becomes something that you just confirm to yourself. That's where the toxic seller is. Now, obviously, since then, we seem to be getting sellers coming in off of these two price areas here. Remember, the seller's not at the bottom of the candle. The seller is where the toxic came from, not where the toxic got to. That's not telling us anything. The imbalance that caused that candle is what we're interested in. So this is an area that I would like to sell into. This is an area I'd like to sell into, these areas here. Yes? So that's the type of idea we're trying to see on these charts. As we go backwards, we can see that there was a toxic buyer at this price here, which resulted in some very, very nice upside moves away from that price. You can see obviously that's resulted in these very, very easy pin rejections away from that print. And that's what we're seeing, yeah.